다 나무에게 사모놀이야. 도마라 자시베에게 에는 섬지샤르 섭지도.
First of all, I'd like to wish you all my auspicious greetings. I saw this on the internet the other day. There's an Akon Rinpoche Dharma Center in the nation of Congo, and they're listening to the teaching every day. So I saw a picture of this. And so you've all, it's I'm really delighted that all of you have made a small Dharma center there and are practicing the Dharma. And I'm taking interest in all of you. I've been taking interest in what you're already doing, and you also recite the Tara praises really wonderfully. And you recite it in Tibetan. And your pronunciation is really good. When you recite in Tibetan, what I think, I can tell immediately where you've got to in the text. And so a lot of Tibetans are sharing with each other the videos of you reciting, and they praise what you're doing. And so you've put a lot of effort into making a Dharma center and starting a Dharma center practicing the Dhamma. And so I'm particularly delighted about that. And so I'd like to offer my particular welcomes to you today. And especially Akon Rinpoche, when he passed away, when Akon Rinpoche passed away suddenly, I was also really very sad. When I was young, before I was enthroned as the Karmapa, I met Akon Rinpoche. And so I knew him well from the time I was little. And after I was enthroned, I met Akon Rinpoche a few more times. And Rinpoche was not allowed to come to India, so I didn't meet him after I went to India. I did have a quick meeting with him when I was in America, but I didn't have a chance to sit down and relax with him. But he passed away very suddenly, and that was a really great blow to all of his students. But Rinpoche himself has helped a lot of poor and disadvantaged people. And he helped over 300 schools in Tibet. And so he went a lot of work in Tibet. And it is my responsibility to locate Rinpoche's tulku. And I will try my hardest to find him soon, but I'd like in particular offer you my greetings and let you know that I'm rejoicing in the work you have done, and thank you. Actually, in your country, you probably mostly speak French, right? And so I should say merci beaucoup. How do you say it? Hard to say. So first of all, to begin today, I thought I should begin by explaining the fourth stanza of the praise you search thoroughly. I go through a stanza every day, and so the fourth stanza of praise he searched thoroughly. The fourth stanza of the fourth stanza is according to the annotated commentary by the fifth Shamar. The meaning is a topic, or is the outline. It is about how he was not attached to this life. The root text reads, he realized from his heart, not just in words, that this life's wealth and fame are devoid of meaning. He exemplified revulsion and a lack of craving and recalled the futility. To him I pray. So I don't think I need to explain every word. But the main point of this, the meaning of it, all of the good things, the happiness and friends and so forth of samsara, the three realms of samsara, whatever they are unnecessary and pointless. And by remembering that, you do not crave or desire them. But instead, you should be content with merely ordinary resources such as food and clothing. This is really very important. Now, this is the same meaning as the fourth good deed that I described yesterday. So one thing I should say, before in the past, someone said, someone said that is the reason why we are just suffering in samsara is that we are deceived by all the good things of samsara, and we should be unattached. So one person, what he thought was, he didn't understand what the guru said, but he thought about the good things of samsara, and he thought that this is really, he understood that the good things of samsara were bad. And when he understand. Now, he had a friend who actually who's named Sipe Punsoko, the same name. And so I said, this is the person who's been giving me problems, this person named Good Things. And he's the one who's been harming me. And after the teaching ended, he got up and he went off to kill his friend Sipe Punsoko, or Good Things of Samsara. Before he said even a single word to his friend, he punched him and beat him really hard. No, the Good Things of samsara, this guy names his spirit samsara. Someone comes up to him without, I think it comes up and starts beating him. He had no idea what was going on. Later on, he thought, oh, what happened? I didn't do anything, so what happened? Later when he was realizing that this person, he made a mistake. He thought that when he said the Good Things of samsara, that was a person's name. And thought that there's some sort of good things of samsara outside of himself. So maybe this is like a joke. It's something we can laugh about. But from another point, there's nothing to laugh about. Actually, it's a really serious point that we need to think about. All the problems we have, all the difficulties we have, we think that it comes from from outside of ourselves. We look outside of ourselves. It's the same as the guy as looking for a person named Sipe Punsoko, Good Things of samsara, and beating them. Basically, the root of our suffering, the root of our problems, is not something that we can search for outside. It's something we need to look inside ourselves. And in order to look inside, we need the eye of prajna. Generally, when we look at something that's right in front of our face, if we want to look at our own face, we can't use our two eyes aren't much help. We have to look in a mirror, otherwise we can't see. In order to see our faults or our actual situation, we need the eyes of prajna. Our physical eyes are not benefit. If we have that eye of prajna, then only then can we see our situation or our problems. And this is something we need to keep in our mind.
아야, 나중에 나 가서 봐봐들이야. 안 가자.
So the point we've come to now is yesterday we spoke about how the king of Zhang invited Mikyu Dorje and how he showed him great respect and reverence. The king of Zhang showed him great respect and reverence, and also how Mikyu Dorje accepted to go to the country of Zhang and so forth. And so I've already explained those deeds and actions. Now, today, when Mikyu Dorje was 14 years old, an envoy came from the Emperor of China, bringing an invitation letter to go to China. Now, at that time, so now the situation at that time and whether he went to China later, I will discuss later. But the Ming emperor sending envoys to invite Mikyu Dorje to China was not just like some sort of a luck or some sort of circumstance. It was not that. The Ming emperors had also sent decrees and offerings or envoys bearing them to the Karmapas prior to the 8th. In particular, the 5th Karmapa, Deshin Shepa, actually went to China himself. He met the third emperor of the Ming dynasty, the Emperor Yongle, and performed many miraculous deeds. So I think that in order to understand, in order so you can understand the situation with Mikyu Dorje receiving the invitation, I would describe the history, the historical background. So I thought I should speak in brief about Karmapa Deshin Shekpa's travels to China and the relations between other Karmapas and the Ming emperors. But primarily, I will speak about the relations between Karmapa Deshin Shekpa and the Ming Emperor Yongle. So there are a lot of people who say that the meeting between the Karmapa and the Chinese emperor had a lot of a political background. Or some people say that it is related to how the Karmapa was given a title and a rank that would be considered important by most worldly people. But the way it's described in the reliable histories of the Karma Kamsang and the way the pastor, the master, thought about it, when Deshin Shekpa met the Ming emperor, the external appearance of the meeting was not so important. Instead of what is in terms of the Dharma, what is the purpose and what was the necessary? And they have a profound understanding of that in Dharmic terms. And so I'd like to take the reliable histories of the Karma Kamsang and the intentions of the Karmapas as the basis for my discussion today. Now, so first to give a brief introduction to Karmapa Deshin Shekpa. So I mentioned it earlier. I think if I repeat it, it will not be redundant. So the 5th Karmapa Deshin Shekpa was born in the region of Nyangdam. So this in a place called Nyangdam. Now, where is Nyangdam in the present day geography? It is in the in Nyangdin Gombo-Jiangdan town in Kongpo-Jiangda County. So his father So his father was Guru Rinchen and Barasa, and his mother Barasa Laki. He was born in the male woodrat here at sunrise on the 18th day of the 6th lunar month. So I don't need to go through that in too much detail now. Now, who was it who recognized the Rilpa Dorje? Who was it who recognized him as the incarnation of the previous Karmapa Rilpa Dorje? It was Khenchen Lodro Rinpoche Yezin. And his main teacher was the second Shama Rinpoche, Kacha Wangpo. And who did he take go forth with and take full ordination? It was with the Khenchen Sunam Sampo of Gendun Gang, who was said to be an emanation of one of the 16 arhats, Akula. And so he probably took these vows when he was full ordination, when he was 19 years old. There were over 80 monks in the assembly when he took the vows. So in Tibetan history, it says in the histories that in terms of Tibetan ordinations, this is an ordination with the largest sangha and the most pure sangha. And Deshin Shepa also received many Dharma teachings from his Khenpo. And so he became like a lama of Deshin Shepa. But Khenchen Sunam Sampo himself had actually greater faith in the Karmapa Deshin Shepa than other students, and praised him very highly, and wrote praises of Deshin Shepa. Then Khenchen Rinpoche was invited to the encampment from Sangpo. Now Sangpo, as I mentioned, is the first, I mentioned it the other day, it was the first Shadra. So the glorious Sangpo was like the Tibetan Nalanda. And so there was the Kashipa Rinpoche. So Kashipa, and the Kashipa means that the four words. This means that he had passed the debate exam in 4. He had passed the test in 4 different in 4 different topics, and so he's called the Kashipa, or 4 texts. And so this Kashipa was invited to the encampment, and the Karmapa studied the scriptures in depth with him. Likewise, Deshin Shepa also followed the gurus Gui Gompo Rinchen Pal, Khenchen Jatsen Pal, Khenchen Yunten Lodra, and Gya Sangye Wongchu. So he did also have other gurus in addition to Kacha Wangpo. Now, when he was 21 years old, the third Ming Emperor, Yongle, invited him to China. And he was in China for over 3 years. Now, if you look at it in terms of the actual time, it was probably 2 years in total that he was there, but it took place over the course of 3 years. Now, Deshin Shepa only lived to the age of 32. He died at a young age. And his collected works are no more than 1 slim volume. But the works we have really elegant compositions in a very chiming style, and different, really particular style, according to Karma Trinlepa. Now, when he went forth, his Khenpo gave him the name Tripal Sangpo. So the Khenpo with whom he went forth gave him that name. But the Ming Emperor gave him the name Rulai Dabao Fawang, which, if translated into Tibetan, is Deshin Shepa Rinpoche Chigi Gyalpo, or in English, Tathagata Precious King of Dharma in English. And so this is what is called in the this is how described or translated in the old translation. Now, you could also translate it as the Deshin Shepa, the king of the true Dharma, but we will take it as it is translated in the old manuscripts. And so that since he's known by the name Daishin Shekpa, and so he became very well known as Daishin Shekpa in China. Now, the year he passed away was the female sheep year in 1415. So 1415 on the 15th day of the 18th lunar month at the Potala Palace. And that is where he passed away. So the Potala, it is the Potala Palace in Lhasa, but it wasn't. But at that time, the Potala Palace was not as large and not as elaborate as the Potala Palace. It was sort of, it was like a retreat place, a solitude place where there were few people. And so that is where he passed away. So next, the reasons or purpose for Yongle Emperor to invite Daishin Shekpa, the main reason was, so here, actually I should show you Emperor Yongle. So I speak about him all the time. I ought to show you a picture of Emperor Yongle. So Emperor Yongle was the third emperor, Huangdi, of the Ming dynasty. And his actual name was Zhuoli. Yongle. It was called Yongle in the old manuscripts. And the reason he's called that, it is the name that he was given in the year that he ascended to the throne. It is not his actual name. So on the side there's a larger picture. And so that is an old one that he was written at that was drawn during his time. And this one on the left is a 3D image made by a computer in contemporary times. And I think that one makes it easy for us to see what kind of a person. So that's why I've put it here. Now, the reason why the Ming Emperor invented the reason why the emperor invited him was described in a Chinese manuscript called "The Tales of the Four Brothers," and so what's written in there is that. So last night, I translated it last night. So I can't say that it's 100% right. I was really busy and I rushed through it to translate it last night. So I rushed to translate it last night and this morning, but still it's like my brain is kind of like is like a tingling. It's like warm or hot. So I don't know that it's actually quite right, but I think that pretty much the meaning is like this. Now, what is written in this manuscript is one Huangdi. So this is was the emperor, was the Lord of the Minor King. So he was the before he was the emperor. He was in the minor kingdom. He learned of a guru named Karmapa in Uzang, who was different than any other. In the first year of Yongle's reign, he sent the inner minister Gompo Sherab with a decree to invite him. He arrived 5 years later in the 12th month. Even the emperor came to welcome, but instead of prostrating kneeling, he merely joined his palms. A feast was prepared in the Huakai audience hall. He gave him gifts beyond number, including a 10,000 song of gold, 2,000 song of silver, and ritual items. He made careful preparations equal to Junwang's. So what this is saying is that before he became emperor, he realized that there was a guru in Uzang who was different than any other. And after he became emperor, he sent the inner minister who was a eunuch, a Tibetan eunuch, actually. And he sent this Gompo Sherab to invite him. And on the way, he went to see the Karmapa. So it took 5 years from his departure to see the Karmapa to come back. And so he came. It's on the 12th, and this is the 12th month. This means the 12th lunar month in the Chinese calendar. He arrived with Nanjing with Karmapa. So at that time, the capital was Nanjing. And so at that time, the emperor came out to welcome, but he didn't. But when he welcomed, he didn't prostrate or kneel. He really joined his brothers. And so at that point, in the Huakai audience hall, so the Huakai is the name of the audience hall. So he gave him a lot of offerings. And so when he said, make careful preparations equal to Jun Wang's. So Jun Wang at that point, there are many kings at that time. There are many Wangs, means kings, the Jun kings. And so he gave him the same right for same welcome ceremonies that would be given to a king of the equal of Jun Wang's. And what we can understand from this is that before the king, the Karmapa, he had heard of the Karmapa's fame before he became emperor. And later, after he ascended to the throne as emperor, he had a queen named Huang Ho. And Huang Ho was she was from the Shu king. And she had a lot of faith in the Dharma. And so she encouraged me. She said, before you said you should invite, now you're the emperor. So please invite him. She encouraged him to. And so for reasons such as this, he sent Gumbo Shirap, the minister Gumbo Shirap, as an envoy to invite him back. And also with a Chinese minister and carrying a decree from the king to invite him. Now, in this decree, what is written is that, I don't need to say everything, but the brief meeting to explain it to you in brief, this decree is recorded in the Feast of Scholars by Pao Zula Chengwa. So as it says, I, the king, I have heard of your name before, and I was in the north, and thought I should invite you then. Now that I've ascended to the throne as emperor, I would like to bring the peace to the kingdom. And I'm thinking for a long time. And I've thought for a long time that the bringing good fortune to all people would means that it shouldn't be just me, but it should be everyone should you and I should do this together. So in the past, Shakyatrungpa showed great kindness for sentient beings and benefited them. And you are inseparable from the Buddha's intentions, as I should come to China and spread the teachings of the Buddhism in China, benefit the land of China, benefit the kingdom. And so you should do as I should say. And something to my, and I also had my father, the Emperor Hongwu, and my mother Hong Taiyu have passed away, and it's been a long time. I've thought that I should do something to repay their kindness, but I haven't found a way to repay their kindness. So now you are actually very skilled in means of activity, and you are inseparable from the Buddha. So I would like to invite you to do, in order to do a ritual to benefit the deceased. That is like the inscription rituals we often do, or the purification inscription rituals we often do. So please come quickly to do a ritualize. And so when this letter arrived, Deshin Shepa accepted to go to China, and he gradually went to China. Now I won't describe all the events that happened on the way. But in brief, when Deshin Shepa went to China, there's quite a lot about the meeting between Deshin Shepa and Emperor Yongle in the Chinese history. There are probably over 20,000 words about this in the Chinese histories. This is probably the most that is written about any Tibetan Lama in the old Chinese historical records. During the time of the Yuan dynasty, the Mongol dynasty, the Chögyal Papa had done a lot of activity on the benefit of sentient beings in China, and there's not as much about him in there. Likewise, in the Feast of Scholars by Pao Zolotrenwe, there are very detailed accounts of Daishin Shikpa's trip to see the Chinese emperor. So in brief, in the Fire Pig year of 1407, on the 12th, the month, the fourth day of the first month in the Tibetan calendar, or in the Chinese, it is in the the 12th month of the fourth year of Yonglu's reign. He went to the capital. So this is Nanjing. So at that time, Nanjing was the capital. Nowadays, it is Beijing. So first, at the beginning, the Ming dynasty's capital was Nanjing, and later they moved it to Beijing. So at that time, Daishin Shekpa went to Nanjing. And so this the situation of Karmapa Daishin Shekpa the Karmapa arriving in Nanjing really inspired everyone, and so everyone, young and old, male and female, went to look at this. It was like the great show. Now there's a really elaborate welcoming procession for him, and including this were the princes, the sons of the emperors, and also many great people. Not only that, there were Chinese bandes or 10,000, over 10,000 Chinese monks, and over 30 elephants wearing all sorts of different jewels. And so this is the history is recorded in the histories about how Daishin Shekpa was welcomed. Now the meeting between Daishin Shekpa and the Emperor Yongle, at that time, Daishin Shekpa was only 22 or 23 years old, and so it was a very young Tibetan Lama, and and the Emperor Yongle was already 47 years old. And so in terms of politics, he had great experience, and that is how he became the emperor. And the other one was this young Lama who was only 23. The other was this very experienced person. Another way of looking at is one was a Dharma leader and one was a political leader. And so during the Yuan or the Mongol dynasty, Dogon Chögyalpapa went and spread the Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan culture in China overall, but especially in the Mongolian areas. In particular, since prior to that, before that, the Mongolians had no writing system, so Dogon Chögyalpapa also made a writing system, and also the Korean alphabet. Was an example used. So the Korean writing system used the old Mongolian writing system developed by Chögyalpapa as its basis. And so now the basis of that was actually Tibetan. So there are a lot of connections between them. Now, when Daishin Shekpa went to China, this is a time when the Ming dynasty was primarily ruling over the Han, or the Chinese people. And so after then, I think there's a great connection between the Chinese and the Tibetan, because the reason we can say this is that that his visit had a great influence in China, because even 200 years after Daishin Shekpa had gone to China, there was a Chinese pilgrim named Xu Shake. And he's someone who actually is mentioned in all the textbooks in Chinese history. He's a very, very famous person. He went to the region of Zhang, and when he came close to Zhang, then naturally what he thought was, this is the path that the precious Dharma King traveled on in the past, isn't it? And the reason why I thought about this is because what we can understand is that Daishin Shekpa went to the Ming, see the Ming emperor, the Ming dynasty, it had a great influence that meant people knew about it and were educated about this. And so this is what that shows us. Now, at that time, when Daishin Shekpa and the Chinese emperor first met, what were the amazing signs that happened? These aren't described in the written histories, but the oral histories are recorded in A Feast of Scholars by Pao Tsula Chengwa. And said that the emperor said that the Karmapa send the different people. He has clairvoyance, and so he'll probably come prepared. And so the Chinese emperor had a clockwise turning conch that he hid, and then he went out to it hid in his robes, and he went out to meet the Karmapa. And the moment he met the Karmapa, he offered him the clockwise turning conch. And at that same time, then Daishin Shekpa also from inside his within his robes took another clockwise turning a right conch and he gave that to the emperor. And when he did this, then the Chinese emperor was like amazed. Oh, he's got something, doesn't he? He was like astounded. And so there are these two conchs. There's the one offered by the Chinese emperor, one by the president. And so these two were plated in gold, and then once again offered to Daishin Shekpa. So later, these two these two were used in the Gondola shrine, and so they're so the two. So it said that these were included in the Gondola shrine on the right hand of the statue. Now, but this isn't in the written histories, but it is in the oral histories. Now, at that time, when the Chinese emperor went to welcome the Karmapa went to welcome him. See, the ministers tried to stop him, saying that the emperors shouldn't go to welcome people. This is recorded in Chinese history. There's a history called the Da Zhongqi. And so what this says is that on the 6th month, when the Western monk Precious Dharma King came, the emperor thought he should go to welcome. But the minister Sha Yunji tried strenuously to stop him. And Yunji said, this should be done. So if you go and welcome him, this will destroy all the protocols of respect. And then the emperor said, king said to Yunche, prostrate to me. Is you weak? You are. Said the emperor said, you have to. Let me give an explanation to that. He said, so what this is saying here, there's a monk coming from us. He's named Precious King of Dharma, and has come to the capital. And so at that time, in the previous, so the emperor thought he should go and welcome him. And that time, the treasurer minister, they called the Zuling, the finance minister, they really insisted that you must not go and welcome, and said this to the emperor. What he said is that these people from outer regions, when they come to the country, they're like just completely surprised or amazed when they come. And so they should follow the protocol for paying respect to the ministers and emperors. And if the emperor himself goes down to them and shows them such a great respect, then the people underneath underneath him will have to do even more to that. And so there'll be no way that people can pay such a respect. And when the emperor said that, when the emperor was a little bit it was a bit upset. And so he said, are you going to do it? So in Hanyu is described. So the Hanyu is an old Chinese history. And something like this, there are different. So they one day they went to a different audience, a different one than the normal. So it's one on the side. And then when Deshin Shekpa was there, as I said before, I said, the emperor said to him, okay, Deshin Shekpa is here, so you should prostrate to him. And so the minister said, I'm just a weak minister, but my rank is that I'm above all of the minor kingdoms. And so if someone comes from like some faraway remote place, then forget about them. If I prostrate to them, I think a disgrace for me as a great minister to prostrate him. So even if it costs my life, I'm not going to prostrate. I can't do what you say. And so at that time, the emperor laughed a bit. Someone with such a backward way of thinking is what the king thought. In any case, it was the king treated him with such respect that even the ministers are totally described. And that's what this story shows us. In any case, when Deshin Shekpa was in Nanjing, they had the Chinese New Year. And so they had a very festive New Year. So this is during the Tibetan, the Chinese 12th year. And so then the next month is the first year. And so it's the Chinese Losar, or Chinese New Year. And so at that time, they had a very elaborate, excellent New Year's ceremony. In particular, and so he showed Deshin Shekpa great respect. And so they put him at the front of the left row. Now, this is we have to talk to it, but but in China, it's different. In Tibet, we always we talk about the right row and the left, and we consider the right row as being higher and the left row as being lower. But in China, it's not always like this. But in this time, you need to sit on the restaurant. But so generally, when Chinese protocol, whoever meets the emperor is supposed to prostrate. But during that time, the emperor ordered that not only would Deshin Shekpa not have to prostrate, but even the great lamas in his retinue would not have to prostrate either. And then on the 15th day of the second month, and so now becomes the second month, and from that time on, following the king's order, the primary reason why the emperor had invited the Deshin Shekpa was that his father and mother had passed away, and in order to repay their kindness and so in that time when they first established the Ming Dynasty, many people had been killed in the wars, and so also for to purify all the obscurations for all of the deceased. And so from the 15th day of the second month, they went to the Lingu Temple. So for the two parents, for the soldiers who died in the mills, and also and all the living people, the Karmapa made the Jiao Jiatso mandala, and then they also had 20 other. They divided the Sangha into 12 groups, and they into 12 and did the rituals. Now there are also 20,000 Chinese monks, and so in brief, there was a very large and elaborate ceremony. Now, on the very first day, the emperor himself came, gave offerings to everyone who was doing there, and for each of the 12 different mandalas, just as we offer katas these days, he offered a silken robe to each of them, that the emperor himself offered these to the mandalas. And so starting on the fifth of the month, on the 5th day of the second, until the 18th of the second month, they did the ritual for the sake of the deceased. And the emperor and the empress came every day to the company. They received empowerments, and that is how they did it. And the other lamas also also did the purification rituals. And so next, what I'd like to show, you what this is this is the Lingu Temple. So this is the Lingu temple described in the old. And so that's it. They're called the monasteries De. So this is what it is. So Lingu is a monastery. And so this is where Deshin Shekpa stayed when he was in Nanjing. It seems that he was offered, Deshin Shekpa was offered this after he left. And so this became a Karmakaji monastery. So until later times, this is the Lingu Gomba. And there are also a few Karmapa monasteries at the Wutai Shan, the Wutai Mountain. And also during the there are also some Karmakaji monasteries during the Mongol time, the Tatuoli and so forth. And so these are all maintained and taken care of by the Great Encampment. And so there was at that time they recorded the members of the Great Encampment recorded in their histories the monasteries they visited. So at that point we can only see the external thing. We can't see. But at that time, so now it's not the same. There used to be a stupa inside of it, but it's no longer. Now it is more like a museum. So Deshin Shekpa, so this is the place where Deshin Shekpa conducted all of the grand rituals. Another thing I'd like to share with you. There is a text called the Wondrous Decree, which is kept in the library of the Tibetan Autonomous Region. And so this drawing, what this shows is this describes the many wondrous events that occurred when Karmapa Deshin Shekpa visited Nanjing. So those days there was no taking pictures and making videos or anything like that. And so that people in later generations could know about the wondrous events that happened when Deshin Shekpa visited. He took a list of what happened. So he took the list of what happened from the 5th day to the 18th day of the 2nd month, and what happened from the 3rd to the 18th of the 3rd month. And so he wrote all of the events that occurred, and they drew paintings. And so the painting I'm showing is not the actual paintings and stuff, but so later I have a painting master from Taiwan, and he took that as an example and he copied it. And so in the painting, the paintings that were described in Chinese and Tibetan and Mongolian and Uyghur and 5 or 6 different letters. Later, when we were copying it, we couldn't find anyone who could write the other alphabets. It's because we couldn't read them. We didn't have the facilities. So my Chinese painting master wrote the Chinese, and I wrote the Tibetan. And so this drawing is probably 50 or 60 meters long, probably 50 meters long. This is a painting of each of the all the events that happened on each of the days. It's like a diary. So on the 3rd day of the 2nd month, the 3rd month, the Tathagata, the precious king of Dharma, the great Maitreya, the peaceful Lord of Dharma, master of Buddhist teaching and Dharma, of all Buddhist teachings on earth. This title was given to the Karmapa. And so this, and so then all the decree, it was given also a degree and also a jade seal. I don't know what happened to the decree, but the jade seal is in a museum in the Tibetan Autonomous Region. And there's a description of this jade seal in the histories, in the Chinese histories. So described in the text as Shenwei Lu. And what it says is that when the Western precious Dharma king arrived in the capital, the king gave him the jade stamp, and when they spoke about it, so does it? So this is made from a very precious material, and so we give it to the king. So when I think about this, the meaning of this text is that at that time, Karmapa Deshen Shepa had gone to China, and so the king had some really wonderful piece of jade, and so he thought he should make a steel out of it and give it to Deshen Shepa. And that time, there was another treasury minister. He's really an important person, and maybe it's a different one than the treasury minister, but an important. So he showed the emperor this piece of jade, and when the emperor showed this to the minister said that during the times of Nanjing, they primarily made the seals out of gold and silver. Now, there's no tradition of giving out seals made out of jewels, because the seals made of jewels are even higher rank or more valuable than those made out of the gold and silver. If you give them a jade seal, then everyone from these remote outlying countries will come just like Deshen Shekpa and say that you're not treating us as well as you treated Deshen Shekpa, and then they'll make problems for the Chinese emperor. And so many ministers said it to the emperor. I don't need to tell you about all this, but if you give them that sort of a siege, because the Chinese emperors used jade seals, right? So there's a question of the seals transcended passed down from the dynasties were all considered very important. They're made out of stone or out of jade. They were not made out of gold. Now, we Tibetans think that gold and silver can be considered the more valuable. So we think that they show a higher rank. But this seal, this is described in the issues around it are described in the Chinese histories. Now, at that time, the ministers said when they said you shouldn't give the jade seal, but he eventually did get it because we can actually see the seal. Not only that, he also gave the three Rinpoches who came with Kampa were given the title of Goshi, and among these was the first Situ Rinpoche. Because one of Situ Rinpoche's names is Kanting Tai Situ, right? So Kanting is like Guanting. So he had a different rank. He had the title of Guanting Goshi. So at that time, the reason it's called Guanting is that the Ming Emperor Yongle gave him that sin of the Guanting Goshi, and so that is the reason why it's called the Kanting Tai Situ. Now, as I mentioned before, at that time, there were many wondrous events that happened. Now, among the many different miraculous events, I used to kind of wonder about this. Was this just a pure vision that the Chinese emperor had, or was this that several people saw? Or was this something that everyone saw? It's like, we just didn't know what it was. But later, when you look at many of the Chinese history, the miraculous events that happened at that time were seen by everyone. Not only that, and some people, even what they said is, all those people come from, what is it, Tibet, or from the West, all the lamas from the West. They're showing us illusions. They're just fooling us by creating illusions. You say they're creating illusions. They saw something. When you see something and you say it's an illusion. If you don't say it's an illusion, if you didn't see it, right? So I think this is that everyone saw it. Now also, this is described in many Chinese histories, and one of them is the Guangming Congxing Lu. What it writes there is, in the second month, the monk from the Karmapa came, following the emperor's decree, conducted the rituals in the Lingus monastery, and they had rituals. There were many miracles. There were clouds and rains of flowers. So one day, and sometimes there were golden flowers that visible throughout the city, and many saw many clouds of the elders and so forth. So lights in the sky and so forth. These all could, so that all the ministers so they wrote so this is what is described here. So at that time, from the fifth day, the 18th day of the month, every day, there were amazing events that everyone saw. Not only that, all the ministers thought. So they didn't say this is the Karmapa's miracles, right? The ministers all said it was very important, very auspicious, and then also some ministers also wrote down a poem talking about the auspicious events, and they offered it to the emperor. And later, they made a Dharma melody, and there was a tradition of singing this melody in the emperor's palace. And so at that time, the Ming histories record very clearly the auspicious events and signs that happened, in particular when there was someone named Zhao Shen. So someone from there was an envoy from the Republic of Zhao Shen, or he was named Ano Singh, and he arrived in Nanjing at that time. The reason he came at that time is that the Zhao Shen dynasty so it was at that time, it was under the control, the power of the Ming dynasty. And so at that point, they sent an envoy to the communists, and that he described what happened, what did the emperor do, what happened in Nanjing, and he'd send them back to his country. And so this is his responsibility. And so the notes that he took, there's a description of what he's going to. This is called. That's what is called the history of the Thai country. So the 20 the Dharma king and 20 monks came from the west. The king paid great respect to them. And so the living Buddha, he looked like an ordinary person. He liked to eat lamb, but in the day, in the nighttime, he kind of shined with light. But otherwise, he's just like an ordinary person. So we said. So basically, what this is, the Huangdi, so the emperor, had great faith in in Buddhism, and so in the West. So Tibetan is to the West, and so it's called the West. So a monk who was in his 20s came, and the emperor paid him great respect. And they say he's the living Buddha. Basically, a living Buddha or an emanation of the Buddha, so they call him a living Buddha. And they say, call him a living Buddha. But if you look at it, if it's the way he looked at him, when you hear about them, he says there's really no difference between him and an ordinary person. He's probably not a Buddha, living Buddha, is what he's saying. And he liked to eat lamb, is what it says. However, it's a little bit different about it. At nighttime, light rays shine out from his body like a lamp. It's like you're lighting a lamp. He radiates light like a lamp, and so that's the only difference. Other than that, there's no difference, and that has deceived everyone and fooled everyone, he said. So he didn't write it well. He wrote good things. He wrote bad things. He only wrote bad things, and the reason for that is, at that time in Korea was the Joseon, and there's a 400-year dynasty history in that, and the first king in that dynasty was Taizong, the first king. And how he became king is that at that time there was confusion. And he became king by respecting the Confucian tradition, and he didn't pay attention to Buddhism, and so Buddhism declined during that time. And so you were never allowed to write anything good things about Buddhism in the official documents. And so when this Korean envoy arrived in Nanjing and right there, he couldn't write that it was good. And so he said he eats meat, he's fooling everyone. But actually, he wrote the bad things, but he does describe the amazing events that happened. And so that is enough for the moment. And I will continue when we come back. So Karmapa Deshin Shekpa went to Nanjing. Conducted the rituals on the behalf of the emperor's father and mother, the soldiers who had died in the wars at the time of the establishment of the Ming Dynasty, and also for all the deceased. And so they had the great ritual at that time, and everyone saw in the same fashion many miraculous deeds. And so after that, the emperor had even greater faith in Deshin Shekpa than he had before. He had paid more respect to him. And so Emperor Yonglula there are 20 different letters from Yongle to Deshin Shekpa in both Chinese and Tibetan. And they're still extant. We can read them. And when you read them, you can understand how deep the connection between Yongle and Deshin Shekpa was, and how deep a connection of guru and student there was between the two, to speak about it in a Dharma fashion. And then on the 13th day of the third month, Deshin Shekpa went to Wutai Mountain. And so at that time, there were a lot of distractions and busyness in Nanjing, and Deshin Shekpa did not like that, so he went to Wutai Mountain. And he went to Wutai Mountain, and as he was staying there, on the 17th day of the fourth month was the emperor's birthday. So Deshin Shekpa sent one of his students to bring relics of the Buddha and relics of arhats to the emperor. And at that time, when he sent the offering to the emperor, there was a letter written by the emperor describing the shadow of the Linggu monastery. And what this is saying is that during his birthday, the emperor remembered Deshin Shekpa and remembered the ceremonies that had been conducted at Linggu Monastery, and he went to there. And so there's a, if I read the document that was written by the king on the 15th day of the 4th month, there was a Kanting Tonghung Wenshi Temple. He went to the Linggu temple. And from the bottom of my heart, I made the aspiration that you, Deshin Shekpa, may be auspicious and everything may be happening for you. If my intention is immaculate, now that the statue has a shadow. Now, please may there be a shadow. No, so the stupa only has actually one shadow, right? For like each person has only one shadow, but one statue. Right? But the stupa ordinarily has one shadow, but because the truth of him saying the statement, and because the statements appear, a second shadow appeared. And then the emperor thought to himself, made the aspiration, the prayer that the land be happy, that the crops be good, and so forth. When he said, if my intention is good, may there be a second shadow. If this will happen as I wish, then may there be another shadow. And then another shadow appeared. So this is written in his own letters. Likewise, there is a supplement to the lives of the great Buddhist masters. And within this, it does describe the situations at the time. If I read this to you.
It is.
One moment, please. What this says is that the Karmapa was inclined to solitude and serenity. The Lama, so means the Deshin Shekpa, he liked solitude and didn't like distractions. And he asked the emperor's permission to be stationed at Wutai Mountain. The emperor was eager to persuade the Karmapa to stay and to remain at Nanjing, but he wanted the emperor wanted to stay in Nanjing, and so the emperor saw the Karmapa's insistent on departure and granted him an imperial carriage and ceremonial banners, and sent an imperial envoy to escort the Karma to Xiandong Temple at Wutang. And further, the emperor instructed the eunuch Yang Shen to renovate the Xiandong Temple, in the stupa in which the relics of the Buddha Ashoka were kept. And so this is the advice. The Xiandong monastery was offered to the Karmapa to be his living quarters. Likewise, earlier when the emperor and Karmapa had visited Linggu Temple and had the ceremonies for the deceased, there were all the auspicious signs. And likewise, after the Karmapa had gone to Wutai Mountain, the emperor often thought about the amazing activities of the Karmapa, and always remembered the Karmapa. So you couldn't And so he once again went to the Lingam monastery and he prayed again. And at that time, he even saw even more auspicious signs than he had seen before. And what this shows, I think, in brief, is that the emperor had loving thoughts for the Karmapa and his country. He had the same, he considered both of them the same. And I think that's what it shows. Then later, at this point, there's something I'd like to show you. This is a Shantong monastery and the Taiyuese monastery at Wutai Mountain. Wutai Mountain. So the stanzas are like a landmark of Wutai Shan. So this is probably. So the first thing, usually, main thing you see there is the Shantong monastery. The Shantong monastery is called a Shantong. It means the monastery of displaying miracles. And the reason it's called this is because during the time the Deshen Shepa stayed there, there were many displays of miracles. And so for that reason, the monastery was given that name. In the past, when the Karmapas would go to Deshen Shepa, in the past, this was offered to Deshen Shekpa. And during the time of the seventh Karmapa, Choda Gyatso, there's a lot of discussion about there being the monastery at Wutai Mountain. So that was the fourth month, and the next month was the fifth month. It was the fifth month, and so on the 18th month of the fifth month was the Karmapa's birthday. So that day, the emperor wrote a verse: "When Deshen Shekpa arrived in the world, all was filled in the light like the suns, and so forth." He wrote a poem, 600 stanzas in length, or 600 lines in length. And so this show is considered, the Deshikpo is very important. But all the phenomena are impermanent, or composites are permanent. So in originally, the person who had encouraged was the queen. From the person who first encouraged the emperor to invite the Karmapa was the Queen Shu. And when she passed away, and the queen loved her deeply, and so he immediately sent a messenger to Deshen Shekpa and Wutai Shan and to have him hold a ritual, a funerary rituals on behalf of the queen. And at that time, he said that he would never take another queen. It said that so that after that point, he never took another queen. That queen had great faith in the Dharma. And that queen also had a dream. And in the dream, she saw Avalokiteshvara. And Avalokiteshvara was writing a sutra. And when she woke up, she could remember it very clear, and she'd written it down. And later, she showed it to Deshen Shekpa to see whether it was authentic or not. And when Deshen Shekpa said, he said, "This is very good." And so, as a memorial for the queen, the emperor printed many copies of the sutra that the queen had heard Avalokiteshvara saying in her dream. Likewise, in our Karmakaji lineage, one important situation is that the king had a copy of the Kanjur brought to China and had it printed in a woodblock edition. And this is what we call the Yonglu Kanjur, the Yonglu collected works of the Buddha. So this is the first Tibetan edition of the words of the Buddha in Tibetan, as scholars say. Now the woodblocks are no longer there, but part of it is still in Tibet, in Floramba. The Yonglu Kanjur, the Yonglu collected words of the Buddha, was printed in the time of the Emperor Yonglu as a result of Deshin Shekpa and the Emperor, and it was the first printing of the collected words of the Buddha in Tibetan. Then after that, Deshin Shekpa had the wish to return to Tibet, and so he asked and so he mentioned this to the king, and there was many conversations between the emperor and Deshin Shekpa. Now, the emperor's intention was that during the time of the Yuan monastery, the Mongol emperor, there were Mongol armies that came to Tibet, and for one thing, they took Tibet over Tibetan by force. But they also made so that there was like an alliance between the Sakya and the Mongols, and they had the same lineage. And the emperor thought there should be the same thing, but Deshin Shekpa said that we need to practice the Dharma according to the Dharma. And he said this many times. And he felt uncomfortable saying when the emperor said that they should wage war. But in the end, the emperor said that the emperor, the thought or the emperor opinion, he said to Tibetan, he said, in Tibet, there are probably many different Dharma lineages. There's so many different lineages. And because there's so many lineages, they won't get along and there'll be conflict. There will be conflict. And so if I actually sent an army, you wouldn't be pleased, right? So we'll have to do something. And so I've made these offerings, and so there's among them. There's also there's like a golden roofed. It's like the pagoda-shaped roof, right? And I think this pagoda roof, we can make it. These are made in small parts. So they're made in different small parts. So we need to bring them to Tibet. And so then together we send horsemen and to send a few soldiers with them. Not to say that it's, but we need to we need to deliver the things and send an army along with it. And then behind the coming, each person would have a piece of the pagoda pagoda roof. We can bring there, and then the king's wishes. And once they've arrived there, they can help you. And so then all of the Dharma lineages will have to follow yours. So you'd have a single Dharma lineage. If you have too many lineages, then in the future you'll have conflict. And then once you have every lineage, all the lineages make them all into one. Tibet is a large region. So if you make like 2 seats, one in the region of the eastern Tibet, so they'll go to Rabgang and have them all gather at Rabgang, and then everyone in Utsang can gather in Lhasa, and then you can have a great Dharma festival every year, and you can get everyone together by doing that, right? So the Ming Emperor had offered Deshin Shekpa that idea. When he said that, then Deshin Shekpa said, "That's not that wouldn't work." The reason is that a single Dharma lineage will not tame all sentient beings. Everyone has very different capacities and interests, and so you need to have different Dharma lineages. And this happened because of the great compassion of the Buddha. And if they practice their own lineages properly, then that's good. And so for that reason, so there's no need to do that. and said there's no reason to make everyone into the same Dharma lineage. Not only that, when Deshen Shepa went back to Tibet at that time, there's the Desi Wangdabe Gyatsen and many other great gurus. He said, please give them all ranks. They all need something, right? And so that's not just one great Lama, but give them all of them titles, send them all gifts. And so that all the, so Deshen Shepa asked the emperor to give all of the important people in Tibet ranks and titles. And so this is beneficial for everyone in Tibet. And in particular, later, after Deshen Shepa had arrived in Tibet, the Ming emperor would send offerings to him every year. Now, one time, when the envoys of the emperor came, they arrived in the area of Zhikung, and they didn't realize that the emperor is destroyed. And so many people after that went up to the king to kind of talk to him. And it's just it's just about the Chinese armies were just about to probably. So that time there was a student of Lord Tsongkhapa named Desi Wangdabe Gyatsen. And he went to Deshen Shepa and offered 3 letters to Dutton. And so we don't have anything to do. We have no. So if you do not take care of us, if you don't think about it, so we need your help, he said. And so he sent these letters 3 times. And Paul Tzu Chengwa said that he actually saw the actual letters. And so, the Chinese were about to invade, and so Deshen Shepa requested the king to say, please, no, there's no need to do that. Please, put a halt to that. After that, Deshen Shepa was very had great love and kindness in his heart, and he didn't like having fame and power because he doesn't like that. And so it's not just that the Vikajipa said, that it also says that so in the beginning, this is said in the Chinese thing, it said this also in the Chinese historical documents. For example, there's the supplement to the Lives of the Masters. It says at the beginning that the Karmapa lived in central Tibet and they had great faith in the Dharma, that he was well known in all of the land and so forth. But he didn't like doing political means and taking power, or trying to see if he could get profit or fame. He did not have that intention. And his intention was to bring happiness and peace to everyone. And so for that reason, Karmapa Deshen Shepa, because that was his intention, so he can't see me. You can hear my voice, but not see my face. This is like it's said in the Sukhavati prayer by Karma Chakmi, right? My camera battery has run out, so you can't see my face. You can only hear me. So we'd better leave it here for today. So it's not so good if you can only hear my voice and not see my face. So I think it's better to leave it here.